Get ready.
Welcome to my very first, I suppose, vlogging video that has ever been made by Adventure Bike Pilot. I have made other videos before, but I generally don't vlog in them. So this is my first one, so please be gentle with your comments. I'd like to do a video primarily because I'm starting to look at doing a trip up in Scotland. It'll be my first time to Scotland, and I'm going to do the North Coast 500 trip. It's a very famous trip that's become quite popular over the last few years. Very similar in respects to Ireland's Wild Atlantic Way. And I suppose I didn't really have it high on my agenda. I suppose, like everybody else, when you live in Ireland, you tend to go to the more hotter or warmer climates when you go on your bike trips, if you're not staying at home. So Scotland and the UK in general has always been on the back of my mind, but never had been top on the list, until I recently watched a series of videos made by another vlogger called the Missenden Flyer. Closely then followed by another set of videos made by Richy, Vida, I think is their name, a couple of guys from the UK as well. And it just blew my mind, the scenery and the roads that they drove through, and it skyrocketed Scotland to the top of my list of places to go. So as soon as 2019 came in, I sat down and started planning the trip. So far I've put together, it's going to be about a 4 or 5 day trip, and so far I've put together the bones of at least a provisional route. It's essentially the same route that the Missenden Flyer did. I have bolted on some little extras like the Isle of Skye, and obviously I'm coming from a different direction, so I'll be travelling up to Northern Ireland first, up to Larne, and then have to take the ferry across. So the plan at the moment is to get over there in the morning at about 7:30. I think the ferry pulls in at 9:30, and then spend my first day getting up. So let's take a look at the first day, and again, bear in mind that this is a provisional plan. The one thing that did strike me about the guys, particularly in the Missenden Flyers video, is that the roads are quite slow, that they're narrow and they're winding, and their surface isn't great, so making progress can be very slow. So I'm conscious of trying not to overload each day. I think based on the videos that I've seen from both the Missenden Flyer and Richy Vid, that I think somewhere between 200 to 250 miles a day is probably a good benchmark to set. And obviously, as I'm in still an early phase of planning, that's the one bit that I'm kind of struggling with. As you can see here in my distances, they range from anywhere from 240 kilometers to over 500 kilometers in a day. And obviously I want to try and avoid those really big days where possible, particularly given the fact that it's very likely, given the time that I'm going to go, being near the end of April, that the weather is quite possibly not going to be great. So the one thing I don't want to do is plan a really big 350 mile day with my hotel booked and find that I have to make it there, forcing me to drive through the rain all day. I suppose that's one of the drawbacks of pre-booking your hotels, is that it means you have to get to your goal that day no matter what the weather is like. But the flip side of that is if I don't book the hotels, I run the risk of not finding anywhere decent. So the challenge is for me is to try and even out these days, and hopefully once I go through these here, maybe if anyone who knows the area quite well could give me some feedback, and if you think that the route is feasible to do it in that amount of time, and if it's maybe looking like it could be longer or shorter than the program here is suggesting, well, I'd appreciate any feedback. I'm using my route app. I find this a very handy little app to use for planning. But let me kick into the first day here, and I'll show you exactly what the plan is. So obviously I have to take the ferry over from Larne. I'll arrive in Stranraer here, and overall the first day I want to get from Stranraer to just above Glencoe. Uh, the actual NC 500 itself doesn't start till just past Glasgow. I think it's Erskine or Erskine Bridge is the first point of actually going onto the coastal route itself. So I have to make it up from Stranraer to here. Now I could have gone straight through Glasgow, but I don't want to do that. I want to try and avoid as much of the cities as I possibly can. So I'm literally going to take the coast road out and make a bit of a sightseeing trip of it. And then I've got up to this park area here. I don't know what it's called. Primarily because I saw this road here when I went into Street View, and it just looked very nice. I'll give you an idea of what it looks like. We'll go to Street View. As you can see, it's looks quite nice to drive through. So I'm looking forward to that. It just keeps me out of the cities. And then from there, it brings me further north along the coast. I'm above Glasgow now, and then I start to head out up. I believe this is Loch Lomond here. So I'll start to drive up along Loch Lomond and make my way up to here, which is Tyndrum, where there's a cafe petrol station there called the Green Welly. Apparently it's a very famous biker stop. Very similar, I suppose, if you're Irish living in Dublin or Wicklow, you'd know Lynham's of Glendalough is a very famous hangout for motorbikers when driving in the Wicklow Mountains. Well, the Green Welly is their version of that. So I'd like to just drop in and tick the box that I've been there. So once I've finished in the Green Welly, I'm going to make my way out and head down to slightly off the actual NC 500 here, down to Kilchurn Castle. It looks like a really stunning castle that will give me an opportunity to get the drone up into the air and have a look at it and get some nice footage, and then kind of backtrack on myself and then start making my way up through the valley here, up through point number 6 here, which is the Bridge of Orkney, I believe it's called, before heading on up and heading into what will then become the Glencoe Valley. Now again, I've taken another little offshoot here. This isn't part of the official NC 500 route, but again, just to give you an idea why I've taken this one off, I'll go to Street View and show you the type of views that this is given me. So I mean, look at that, very similar to Glendalough, I suppose, here in Ireland, or the Gap of Dunlow. There was no way I was going to drive and be that close to a road like this and not drive down it. So that's definitely on my to-do list. So trying to keep back on track, I'll double back on myself up to the actual NC 500 and then continue on through the Glencoe Valley itself before finishing on day one in a little town just past Glencoe village called Ballacoolish. So that should tee me up nicely then for the second day, and hopefully I'll get a good bit of mileage covered on the first day and some sights put in. So that's day one. So I'll start to walk you through day two next. So looking at day two, as you can see here, it's coming out of 445 kilometers, which I think is just shy of 280 miles. So again, this day is one that I probably need to cut back a little bit, maybe about 30 or 40 miles. But it's very hard to do. But the main problem that I have is leaving from where I am here down in Glencoe. The route that I'll be taking brings me basically onto the Isle of Skye, and there's nowhere really decent that I found that's available for the time that I'm there to stay. Portree being the main town, the capital of Skye, there's nowhere that's available the day I'm going to be there. So I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to the hotel, so I'm going to finish up out here in a place called Balmacara. There's a potential for me to strip out point 2 here, but I really don't want to, so I might just bite the bullet on this day and continue with the mileage that I have here. So as you can see, the overall route takes me from just above Glencoe. It brings me all the way up past Fort William and Ben Nevis, continuing north, and then I cut across here to bring me onto the Isle of Skye, and I essentially do a loop of the Isle of Skye coast road, bringing me back out and depositing me here to Balmacara, which will set me up then for continuing on north up along the west coast for the third day. So if I look at the points that I've currently got set up, I'll leave from Ballacoolish, where I'll be staying on the first night, continue on out over the bridge here, and then up along the coast road, up along this lake here by Fort William, where Ben Nevis is England's highest mountain. And here again, I kind of go a little bit off track here, heading out to Glenfinnan. Now, you may know Glenfinnan from some movies, most notably Harry Potter. It's the famous train that goes across the bridge. So it's a really good point that I've earmarked to try and get the drone up over and try and get a nice shot of the bridge, and hopefully try and get a train crossing it if I can time it right. So I think it'll be worth the effort to get down there. Coming back then up onto my main route, continuing on north, I'll just keep following the main route until I get up to here, which is point 3. And point 3 is the Illandonnan Castle. Again, it's a very famous castle, most notably, I think, from the Braveheart movie. So it's definitely on my to-do list. The problem I have is it's one that I really want to capture on the drone, but from watching the Richy Vida videos, apparently it's a no-fly zone for drones. So I'll either have to just be happy with taking ordinary photographs of it, or I might try and find a sneaky spot where I can kind of duck out of view and try and get the drone up on it without anybody noticing, keeping it at a distance over the lake. But I'll have to make that call on the day. I mean, obviously it'll be weather dependent. I'll continue on out then, and then cross the bridge over onto the Isle of Skye itself proper. And then that brings me out. I'm going to take over to the west coast of the island first. I want to have a look out by the inlet here, out by Carboast, I think it's called. Then coming back in and bringing me all the way up here to point number 5, which is Dunvegan Castle, a huge big castle. I believe it's home to the MacLeod family, and they've never not lived in it. They're still living there to this day. So it's an interesting one. Again, if I can, I'm going to try and get the drone up over it. Coming out of Dunvegan, I'll make my way across here before moving completely up to the north around the coast road here at the very tip, and then coming down, and again there's a mountain road here that goes up that will give me a good view out over the entire peninsula here. I believe it's called the Quarang. It's supposed to be an amazing rock face type mountain. And again, the road looks amazing. It really does look good. So then I'll come back down off that and head for point 8, which is Kilt Rock. It's kind of like a cross between the Giant's Causeway and the Cliffs of Moher, with a giant waterfall over it. So there's no way I'm going to miss that. So I'll pull in there for a few minutes and again try and get the drone over it before dropping down and heading southwards again to point number 9, which is the Old Man of Store, which is a huge big rock on the side of a cliff. Again, from a movie, I think it's from the opening scenes, or some of the opening scenes, to the Prometheus movie from the Alien genre. So definitely worth a trip out. It's probably one of the more famous places to visit on the Isle of Skye. That brings me down through the capital of Skye, which is Portree, before I drop down off the island, following the coastal road out, taking this little loop along the coast, bringing me back off the island, and then finishing in a place called Balmacara. So that should then set me up then for the next day. So again, it's a long day, but I think it's going to be worth it. All the reports and the videos that I've watched on the Isle of Skye makes it look absolutely amazing. Definitely worth the effort. So it's just a matter of just getting up early and putting in the time. So that's my second day. So let's crack on into the third day. Take a look at day three. Day three, as you can see, is 268 kilometers, so it's quite a short day. So I may need to pad that out by taking some miles away from day two and adding it on here. Obviously, that's going to be tricky because I've already got my hotels booked, so trying to balance it out might be a challenge. So I think that's 167 or 168 miles in total. So I mean, I'm not adverse to doing a slower day. I can pad it out maybe just by exploring a little bit that's off route if I don't pad it out on the file. But let's have a look at it a bit deeper. So starting off from my hotel here near Balmacara, I'm going to head on up here out by Strom Ferry, I think it's called. Continue on heading north until I get to here. So this is a junction that brings me on to the Applecross Pass. Now, the Applecross Pass is an extremely iconic road. It's one of the main reasons I'm doing the trip is to do this pass. The problem I'm going to have is that because of the time of the year that I'm going, which is the end of April, it could be absolutely bucketing down with rain. So if it's very, very bad weather, I may have to make a judgment call on whether I'm going to do it or not. And the reason for that is if I zoom in, you'll see it. You can see that there's a huge amount of hairpins. Now, that's not too much of an issue, but the problem is that this road is notoriously narrow. It's not much wider than the bike is itself once the panniers are on, and trying to make a hairpin turn when the road is wide is a challenge enough. But the problem here with the Applecross Pass is that it's actually the UK's most inclinous route. It's the steepest road in all of Great Britain. I think it's 20 or more percent of an incline. Now trying to do a hairpin, multiple hairpins, one on top of the other, up a really steep road with oncoming traffic on a really heavy laden bike is a challenge even in dry weather. So trying to do it in the wet is is a whole other ball game, as most motorbike drivers would know. You know, car drivers just don't appreciate how difficult trying to do an almost 180 turn on a heavy bike up a hill is. So I'll make a judgment call on the day. I mean, it's highly unlikely I won't do it, but I just have to be conscious of how dangerous this road is. I mean, every video I've seen of people doing it have claimed that you'd want to be an experienced rider to do it. But then having said that, I'm also looking at the videos and going into street level, if I show you here, it doesn't look as bad as a lot of people I think are making out. I mean, not to take away from it, but to me that doesn't look too bad. I mean, it is narrow, but the road itself does seem to have a widened corners on the bends here. There's a bit of a gravel trap here. So I'm hoping it's not as bad as everyone's made out, because it is playing on my mind. I am a bit nervous about it, but it's like anything. Things are always sound worse than they are. I think when I get there, it won't be half as bad. So I'm really looking forward to doing it. The views of it are supposed to be spectacular. So hopefully now that'll drop me down into the Applecross village itself. There's a little place to stop there for fuel and to get a coffee. The views out here are supposed to be amazing. And then head on out along this coast road. So apparently this whole section here is apparently just stunning. So I really don't want to miss that. So I'll follow this out and continue on up through, I think it's called Gairloch or Gairloch, continuing on north, and then heading into Ullapool, which will be my destination for the day. But before I head in, I'm going to go up by this lake and have a look at it, and then come down here to point number 6, which I believe is, there's a waterfall in a gorge called the Falls of Masoch, I believe it's called. So I'll try and stop in there and get some drone footage on that before heading in for the evening into Ullapool. I think I'm actually staying in the same hotel that I believe the Missenden flyer stayed in on his trip, and he said it was a nice place. So a good tip from him. So that will be the end of this day. Teeing me up then for the following day. So let's take a look now at day 4. So day 4 is by far the biggest day in terms of mileage. It's 504 kilometers, but I'm not too worried about it on this occasion. It's actually the exact same route that the Missenden flyer took, so I know it's achievable. Now I know he did say it was probably a longer day than he wanted, but from what I understand from the videos that I've seen, from Ullapool to John O'Groats is probably about a 5-hour trip, but then from John O'Groats down the east coast, the road gets much faster and much wider, and from here to Inverness is about 2 hours. So the east coast, whilst it's supposed to be very, very beautiful, apparently is not as slow or as epic as the west coast. All the really good stuff is over here and on the north. This is beautiful, but we're essentially on the home stretch here now, coming down here with much quicker roads. So I'm not too concerned about the mileage on this occasion, unless of course it's pissing raining and then it becomes an issue. But look, sometimes you have to play the hand you're dealt. So going into the detail of it, leaving from Ullapool, we're going to follow the main North Coast 500 out. So I'm going to make a slight deviation here on point number 2 to go to Achmelvik Beach. Apparently it's this stunning little sandy cove beach that only the locals are supposed to know about, apparently, but it looks nice in the photograph, so I'll stop in there and get a few snaps before heading out along here. And continuing along the coast. As you can see, it's extremely winding, and you can tell it's obviously very wild and coastal. I get a sense it's going to be very similar to a lot of the Wild Atlantic Way, particularly along, you know, the southern part of the Ring of Kerry or the Berda Peninsula, that type of thing. And then we cut across up here to the north point here, which is Dunnet Bay. So in Dunnet Bay, there's apparently a nice little town here that has a coffee shop. Sorry, this isn't Dunnet Bay. It's Durness. Sorry, Durness. There's a nice little coffee shop here, apparently called the Cocoa Mountain Chocolate Shop, and apparently they make the world's best hot chocolate. So I'll have to go in and test their statement on that. I've even seen that they sell motorcycle shaped chocolate bars, and apparently their chocolate is to die for. So as a chocolate lover, I'll definitely be stopping in there to check that out. And before I leave, then I'm going to head up here to, there's apparently a beautiful little cove up here that I'll go and check out. And then from there I'm going to move out along the northern coast now. We're heading more eastward in direction, but up along the most northerly point of Scotland. And point number 8 here is Smoo Cave. So apparently this is an amazing geological huge cave with a little sandy beach in front of it. You can do guided tours in it. I don't know if I'll get to do that. It's very hard to do these things when you're completely geared up in your motorbike gear and all your tank bag, etc. on your motorbike. So I'll see. If I can, I will. So after Smoo Cave, I'll continue on around the coast, looping around here, all the way along here until I get to Dunnet Head, which I got mixed up with earlier. So Dunnet Head, most people think that John O'Groats is the most northerly point in Great Britain on the mainland, but it's not. Dunnet Head is the actual most northerly point. After here, you're up into the Orkneys. I think John O'Groats became the most famous because I think John O'Groats is where the original ferry out to the Orkneys was operated by a man called John, and the fee to get out there was at one single groat, so it became known as John O'Groats. So it was just the most popular point. The actual most northerly point is Dunnet Head, and again, it just wouldn't make sense if I'm so close to it to go to the actual most northerly point on my way to the most popular northerly point, which is John O'Groats. So as I mentioned earlier, once you're done in John O'Groats, it's effectively a straight run all the way down on a kind of a much faster and wider road. So this should take only about 2 hours to bring me into Inverness, closing out the day. So that brings us now to day 5. This is the last of my full day's driving, and again, it's a large day. It's a 496 kilometers, but I'm not too worried about that because I'm basically out of the Highlands now and on much faster and bigger A roads. So when we look into the route itself, starting in Inverness, where we finished the day before, Inverness is just above Loch Ness, right here. This is Loch Ness here. Again, it would not make sense for me to go all the way to Scotland and be this close to Loch Ness and not go see it. So I'm going to come off the main route, go down along the shores of Loch Ness. Here at point number 2 is a castle called Urquhart Castle. And then from there, I'll continue on around the lake, looping around to head north to come back onto the main route, bringing me down through the Cairngorms. So the Cairngorms is a large national park, all here in green. There's 2 main roads through the Cairngorms. This one here, which I think is called the A9, or this one, which is the more scenic route. And as you can see, it's quite winding and apparently is beautiful. So here at point number 5, it should bring me quite close to Balmoral Castle, which is where the Queen, I think, spends most of her time. So I'll drop in for a cup of tea there. I don't think I'll get the drone over here. I think I'd probably be arrested if I tried to get the drone in the air above a royal family homestead. Coming out of Balmoral, I'll head then. There's another castle here called the Braemar Castle, I think. So I'll try and get some footage of that if I can before heading out of the Cairngorms along this road here. Now, coming out of the Cairngorms, I'm going to head out towards Stirling. And then point number 8 is the Wallace Monument. Again, I saw a picture of this. It looks stunning. Definitely worth the effort to go and try and see it. Again, if I can get the drone up over it, I will, but I probably won't. It's in quite a built-up area. I'm avoiding Edinburgh. I know it's a beautiful city and I'm quite close to it, but I just, when I'm on a bike trip, I just try and avoid big cities like that if at all possible. So leaving Stirling, I'll make my way down here and then get to Moffat. I think at some point I'll come close to Falkirk, where the Battle of Falkirk was. So I'll try and drop in on that. But the ending day will be here in Moffat. I am going to take a little detour before going into Moffat up by this lake. It's called Megget Head. I just happened to spot it on the Google Earth maps. If I just zoom in here, you'll see why I'm trying to get to it. Let me click. So you can see it's an absolutely stunning little road around this amazing looking lake. Definitely worth trying to get the bike down onto it before finishing up for the day. So I definitely think I'm going to get some really nice photos of this spot as long as the weather is good. But it's nice to spot these things sometimes on the maps that most people wouldn't find. And then that will drop me down into Moffat. So I'm stopping in Moffat because there's a biker hotel called the Buccleuch Arms, I think it's called. I've probably murdered the pronunciation of that. But the Buccleuch Arms is a famous hotel for bikers. It's got a lot of individual sheds that you can bring your bike in and lock them up in. So a lot of bikers meet here and use it as a base of operations to go out and explore the overall region. So hopefully I'll get to meet some other bikers and share our experiences and some routes and tips from those folks. So that'll be the end of that day, my last proper day. So finally, my last day, day 6, I think it is. It's a short one, 241 kilometers, and that's just because I've time to kill before I get to my ferry. My ferry, I think, leaves Stranraer at about 4:30 in the afternoon, so I've a good bit of the day to go and explore a bit more before I finish up. So taking off from Moffat, I'm going to explore a little bit more northerly, back up towards the Megget Head Lake and loop around here up to a place called St. Mary's Loch, another little lake just up the road, before dropping back down through this park area here which will bring me down to the bottom of the peninsula here, right at the coast, to point number 4, which is Caerlaverock Castle, I think it's called. I can't pronounce these words. It's terrible. I know I'm Irish. I should be able to pronounce these. So from the castle, I'm going to make my way up through Dumfries, heading out here towards point number 5, which is Castle Douglas. And then from there, I'm basically finished. From Castle Douglas, I'm going to just make my way through here all the way down to Stranraer to catch the ferry home. So as I said, my ferry home should get into Larne at about 6:30. So that means then I have to make the trip from Larne all the way down to Kildare. It should take me about 2.5 hours. So that should get me home for about 9:30, 10 o'clock that evening. So it'll be a long old day, but it'll be well worth it. So that's the whole trip in a nutshell. I mean, obviously, if anybody has done this trip and has seen the routes that I've just laid out and think that maybe I'm overreaching on some days or underreaching on other days, or if there's places that I've missed that I really should include, or if there's some places that I've included that just aren't worth the effort, by all means, give me some feedback. I'm more than keen to get some feedback from people to have a look at the route. And again, please be gentle with your comments. This is my first time making an actual vlogging video, so I'm obviously a bit nervous putting it out there, and I know I've stumbled and stuttered my way through it, but hopefully that'll improve over time and experience. And I hope that it was of use to somebody else who's maybe planning a similar trip. And obviously, this is just the first part. I'll obviously video my actual trip when I'm over there, both from the bike, and I'll get as much aerial footage as I can, weather permitting, without getting myself arrested. And I'll include it all in the videos, and then put it all together in a playlist on my channel. So if you like the video, please like and subscribe and hit the little alert bell. And as I post new videos, hopefully you'll get to see the trip. My plan is to get into the hotel at the end of each day, edit the footage from that day, and then post it out that evening, assuming I have Wi-Fi. If not, I'll just hold on to it till the next evening and post it as soon as Wi-Fi becomes available. So you should be getting it in real time as much as possible. That's the plan. Whether it actually transpires or not is another story. It might be that I'll just have to keep the footage and edit it when I get home and then put it up. But either way, I'll get it out there and share the trip with you. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll talk to you again. Thank you. Bye bye.